Hello and welcome back to the Modern Leader Way podcast. I am joined by another amazing guest. Today it is Tara Rule. Hi, Tara.
Hello, good to see you.
And you. I'm so happy to have you here. Tara, we have some exciting news to reveal, but Tara is a busy to balanced positive psychology coach, which I just love. I'm just like, oh, I want to hear more about that. Helping busy professionals, business owners, and leaders to play to their strengths, succeed without sacrifice, and create a life they love so they don't let fear get in the way of reaching their potential. So, a lot of alignment in terms of what Tara and I do. So, I'm excited for this conversation, especially because today is book launch day.
I'm
So,
so
Tara,
excited.
I know how exciting. I'm so honored to be featuring you on your book launch day. So, why don't you
Oh,
tell us about your book and the exciting news?
thank you so much. Seriously, for years I've gone, one day I'll write a book, one day I'll write a book. And I actually have two book titles in my mind. Like for years I've
Oh
had
my
them.
goodness.
And now I'm here going, it's on Amazon. You can actually go and buy it. It's like,
Oh,
whoa.
how exciting.
So the book is called Stop Apologizing. And it's Silence Your Inner Critic, Find Your Confidence, and Stop Saying
Mm.
Sorry. And whenever they tell you, don't tell anybody the title of the book until launch day. Telling everyone, I'm like, oh, I'm really
How
naughty.
can you
Uh,
not? That's like crazy.
exactly. But the amount of people when I'm telling them what it is are just going, I need to read that book.
Mhm.
Like, yes, hello, I apologize all of the time. And really the book is about how much we apologize. I spent a lot of my kind of career in corporate and I would see people apologize over and over and over again. Um, but also, it's not just what we say to other people, because often we're apologizing because we don't necessarily feel confident ourselves. And it's what are we saying to ourselves? So
Mm.
often, alongside the sorry to interrupt, sorry to ask a stupid question, sorry for taking up your time, sorry for crying, sorry for taking up so all these things, we've also got that I'm not good enough. I have to be
Mhm.
perfect. I might be rejected. I might be abandoned. It's like we've got this internal voice as well. So it plays on the story, the books about both what we say to other people, but also what we say to ourselves, because we really need to kind of work on that in order to be able to put the tools that I share into practice as well.
Mm. So this is awesome. Let's dive in because I know you've got a career history as well that you get to pull on in terms of your own lived experience of this, right?
Mm,
Because you can only write from experience. And I had a profound experience when I was in my last kind of role in corporate, which was a director role. And I was working with a managing director who said to me in some feedback that I needed to stop apologizing. And I was like, because I wasn't going around saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for this." I get that. I see that all the time. I hear that. But also there's this like almost hidden, unspoken apologeticness about us as well, isn't it? In the way
yeah,
that we potentially sit in meetings or like I used to sit with my notebook. I used to almost sit back with my notebook like a good little girl, take
yeah.
notes, be almost like disconnect from the meeting. Um, and and I didn't understand what he meant in that moment, but
Mm,
this happens, I think, all the time, doesn't it? In terms of like it's not the obvious apologies as well. There's a lot of the way that we move through life just apologizing almost for taking up space and having a place around the table.
completely. I read a book years ago. I think it might have been one of the first self-help books that I ever read. And I've now read a lot of self-help books. I love them. I
Same.
literally I bought so many I can't actually
Can't
keep
have
up with
two.
reading
Can't
them,
have
but I
too
love them.
many.
But one of my early ones was Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg.
Okay.
And it's a bit of an old school one, but it talks about the fact that often we don't have a seat at the table, but it's not us being pushed away, it's us like leaning out. And
Mm,
it's like, no, lean in. If you're invited to a meeting, if you're invited to the table, lean in, be part of it.
mm,
And that was like, oh yeah, I do. Like, and again, I didn't necessarily apologize all the time, but I didn't necessarily lean in. And if
mhm,
you're not leaning in, you're probably leaning out.
mm,
And then also it's the language where maybe we say, think we should do this. It's like, I think, or I would just like to say. It's like, no, how not I think is like, I believe we should do this. A
mhm,
little bit more assertive and
mm.
remove the word just. And it's funny because I'm aware of it and the apologetic language, but the process of writing a book is amazing. And I realized the amount of filler words that I put in. I actually
Oh,
did a control find how and like to replace how many times I used the word so or just
oh my God.
or really. And it's like they're just like filler. Use it there. They're filler words. They're
Yeah.
not needed. And again, that can take away our power sometimes when we're saying stuff that just doesn't need to be said. We can be kind of much crisper, much firmer, much to the point. So
Mm.
yeah,
All
there's
right
lots
then.
of different
So there's lots of ways that this apologizing shows up then. There's the
mm,
obvious, there's the more subtle, and then there's the inner kind of apologizing, or just always thinking about where we're not good enough. Where does
mm,
this come from? Let's look back at where this like comes from, where it all started, how it
yeah.
like gets ingrained in us.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different things. I think that let's start off with that bit of story, that storytelling, because that's a huge part of it. And a lot of it comes from our childhoods. And a lot of it comes from experiences or what people tell us or what the stories that kind of we're telling ourselves comes from experiences. And for me, for a long time, I would say that I wasn't good enough. And I wouldn't actually say it. The thing that I would say is I'm just lucky.
Hmm.
So I'd get a promotion. I'd go, oh, I'm so lucky. I'd get 100% bonus. I go, I'm so lucky. I'd go for a job interview and I go, I'm so lucky. And I always had an excuse. Like people warmed to me, that's why I got the job. Oh, well, this person moved and therefore I got promoted. So I'm just really lucky that it was there. At no point did I ever go, yeah, I got that because I deserved it. I worked really hard and I'm glad I got 100% bonus because I worked hard for it.
You're
I
right.
never said that. I just got, I'm lucky. And I
Hmm.
realized for me, it came from a belief that I wasn't good enough. And actually, when I started being coached myself, I realized it came from me when I was 12 years old. And we had something called the 12 plus. My kids do it now. It's called the 11 plus, which is when you're 11, 12, you take an exam and it defines which school you go to, whether you go to a grammar school or secondary school. And I didn't pass. But actually, it wasn't that I didn't pass. At that moment, when I opened that envelope, I made up a story that I wasn't good enough.
Hmm.
And it's shocking how 30, almost 40 years later, yeah, 30 years later, I'm realizing, oh, wow, so that's why I procrastinate and only create presentations last minute. Because if I do it last minute, then if it all goes wrong, well, that's because I only had 5 minutes to do it, not because I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
So I would procrastinate. I wouldn't necessarily put myself out there. I wouldn't go for roles. I wouldn't say that I want to be a leader. All these things that I was doing or wasn't doing came from that story. And one of the things that I kind of love most is help people challenge it to go, is it true? It, it's just not. It's not true that I'm not good enough. It's not true that you're not good enough, that you have to be perfect, that you're going to be judged, you're going to be abandoned. But when I coach people, so often it comes back to things and experiences that happened when we're younger. What about you? What does that trigger for you? I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean I've done a lot of work around recognizing whose voice it is as well.
Mm,
Sometimes I hear myself think, and if I say it out loud, it's like, gosh, that's harsh. And it's like, where did I first hear that? Because like it might be that I just heard a flippant comment from someone, in school, like a teacher or something, or maybe it was my dad when he was in a bad mood, to just say like,
mm,
stop pestering me, you're being a nuisance, get out, sort of thing. Um, and you internalize that because you don't want to or you don't know how to process it at the time, and it's like it feels quite all consuming when you're younger, right, to be
mm.
on the receiving end of that, even though there wasn't the intent to do any harm, but actually we internalize it, and then the more we hear it in our own minds, the more it becomes that story. So I do recognize, kind of like, sometimes I go, that's not even my voice, right? That's
Yeah,
not me. So in that sense, it's easier with that awareness to go, it's not true. It's not true. I don't have to take it on anymore. So yeah,
yeah,
but it's been rife through my career. I had 20 years in corporate, and I know you've had a long corporate career as
Mm,
well. And, this really held me back. And it was only actually when I left to do some of this more kind of self-development work and actually helping others and talking to others about it, that it's like I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone in being in my head with all those thoughts and those doubts and the lack of confidence that sort of I felt I was left with because of it. I wasn't alone, and there's like it's almost like an epidemic that we just do not talk about enough.
completely. I do a lot of group work and I do a lot of group workshops, and I invite people, I make them interactive. I invite people to put in the chat the whole way through. So I share a bit about me and I go, what story are you telling yourself?
Mhm,
What are you saying? And I call it your inner critic. So it's around, okay, we've all got an inner critic. We've all got that voice inside us. What are they saying to you? What's the story? And the thing that I love most about the group sessions I do is when people go, oh, I'm not the only one that thinks this, because we're really not alone, but we think we are.
mhm,
So that's why I like to talk about it, and that's why I like to share some of my experiences, because as well, from a confidence point of view, I help people feel more confident. And for years, my personal development was to be more confident. But if you talk to anybody around me, they would go, "Oh, Tara's super confident."
same,
It's like,
yeah.
I might look it, but inside, I was worried I was going to get found out at any moment.
Mhm,
So, as well, I think just sharing to go, nobody's confident all the time. Nobody feels assertive all the time. We all have these doubts. We all have these fears. And the more that you realize that you're normal, the more we can go, oh, well, if I'm normal, yeah, I can do something about it.
mhm.
So I really like talking about it because I think it's really important.
Yeah, definitely. So take us back then and tell us a bit more about your kind of career history and some of the challenges that you came up against and like how you ended up on this path that you're on now.
Yeah. So I kind of go all the way back. And the reason why it's relevant is because I think it's a really important the narrative we put to things. So I'm a positive psychology coach, and the story we tell is really important. We get to choose the story we tell. So going all the way back, I didn't want to go to university. I did quite well at school. I did okay. I was like, I do not want to go to university. I want to work in London. Like that was my goal. I want to work in London.
Yeah.
And so I got a job in London when I was 18. And I didn't go to university. And some people now find it quite surprising because I had a really successful career in corporate and I never went to university. But it never became my narrative. It wasn't something that I had to apologize for. It was like, no, I didn't get to university. I wanted to work in London and I did. But I meet some people that didn't go to university and they're now going, "Oh, I feel like I should do an MBA or something because at any point I might get found out that I never went to university and people might judge me for it." So I think it's just interesting, kind of the narrative you put to it. I'm there going, yeah, I own it. I'm going, yeah, I didn't go, I didn't want to.
Mhm.
And I've had a really successful career. And there's some people that have been and they've had a successful career, and it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is the story we then tell ourselves.
Yeah.
At no point was I then go, I'm not as good as my peers because I didn't go to university and haven't got a fancy degree and things.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's kind of all the way back. So I started working at 18. I dread to think now. It's my birthday, so I'm there going, oh, like how many years is that? 20, far too many. I can't even think.
Oh, don't.
Um, but I think definitely one thing that I've done in my career is I've stretched outside of my comfort zone. So even though I didn't have the confidence in myself, other people had the confidence in me and they saw something in me. So there were a few times where I was given opportunities or asked to take on opportunities. And instead of going, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that, I was like, yeah, let's go for it. So that's one thing that I would define, would help define my success is I'd be willing to stretch outside my comfort zone.
Mhm.
So I went on maternity leave and I was a qualified accountant. So I went to night school, did accountancy for 3 years, and then maternity leave, came back. I was going right back into finance, doing the same thing. And then a boss saw me and he went, hey, do you want to come and work in marketing? And I'm going, sorry, I'm an accountant. It's like, no, come and work in marketing. You'd be amazing at this role. And I'm there going, yes. And I remember phoning my husband as I walked out and went, So I've just accepted a job in marketing and I've just got a huge pay rise. I'm kind of going, I have no idea what happened. But I think if I look back and like if I had have let my emotional brain take over, I would have gone, no way, you're an accountant. Why on earth would you think you could be successful in there? But I think for quite a long time I've been able to kind of be aware of that emotional brain, but
Mm,
also be able to have the why not kind of
mm.
mentality and go, let's grow, let's stretch, let's say yes to things. So, and I think that's something that's definitely opened up a lot of doors for me throughout my career.
Yeah, I love that. And again, so many like synchronicities in our stories, but actually probably a slightly different angle from my perspective because I didn't go to uni either. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work in an office. And that's what I got was an office job. And I worked my way round and up in this very technical environment that oh sorry. Um, door. I'm so sorry. It's typical, isn't it? Knock on the door and
That's
the
all
dog
right.
barks. Um, so yeah, I didn't go to university and found myself in this very technical environment. And um, these people had been to university and then gone on to like grad school and become actuaries and things like that. And I found myself feeling very inadequate around the
Mm,
table. And I think that was a big part of my own doing was to not feel good enough in this table full of academics, really. That's what I was dealing
mm,
with. People that were very clever, even though I always had this like this sense of what needed to be said or like what wasn't being spoken about, but I never felt confident enough to like bring that forward. So again,
mm,
I would literally retreat and then be up in my head saying, "You should say it. Go on, say it. Just say it." And before we know it, the meeting's concluded and we're all walking out the door. So I think I love that around the narrative that you give, the story that you create for yourself, right? Um, and by the same token, I'm still like today when I look back in hindsight, I'm like, actually, you don't need to go to university. It's great if you want to go, but you don't
mm.
need to go because look at the career that I had despite that. Um, but it wasn't without, I think, and I don't know, do you feel like times are changing in terms of that? Because, there was always that kind of drive to like if you made it to university, then you
Mm,
your parents are proud, you've
mhm.
kind of done it. Um, but there's so many more kids seem to go to university as a kind of just the thing that they go and do. Um, but it doesn't seem to have this hold the same um what's the word I'm looking for? Uh
Prestige.
yeah, prestige as it did once before. And I don't know whether there's more emphasis placed on going out and just getting some life experience sooner and some work experience,
Yeah.
Um, I don't think there's one size that fits all, but I don't know whether times have changed since then.
Yeah. I think things have changed, but I think things are changing around what success looks like as well.
Mm.
So, um, I had a conversation with my daughter a little while ago, and she said to me, "Mum, will you be disappointed if I'm not successful when I'm older?" And I said to her, "Well, what do you mean by successful? Because successful in my eyes doesn't mean you've been to university and you're a doctor or something. It's whereas I think like years ago there might be, oh, this is what success means, and I'm like, yes. And so I made her think about what success. She was like, oh yeah, well I don't know actually. I was like, yeah, we get to define
Mm.
our own success, and again that little bit of storytelling. One of the things that I had the narrative that I had told myself for a few years, and I wasn't aware of it until last year, was my dad used to always tell me that he wasn't a successful businessman. So he was a hairdresser, he had a couple of salons, And then he sold them because they weren't necessarily hugely successful. And I remember him also always saying to me, I was too nice to be a successful businessman. And I pride myself on being a nice person. So I realized last year I had this narrative going, I'm too nice to run this really successful business. I'm too nice to be a millionaire because millionaires aren't nice people. They're awful people. I'm too nice to have a massively successful business. And I realized part of it came from, as you said, these stories that we hear that we don't necessarily challenge. A story my dad would say that he wasn't successful. But my dad actually passed away just over 2 years ago. And the realization I had last year was um, he passed away with me, my mum, and both my brothers next to him. Like, we were literally holding his hands as he passed away in his final moments. And I feel so grateful for them. And I
Hmm.
literally look and go, that isn't success. Like spending your last minutes with your family. It's like, I don't know what is. So it really helped me just shift to go, well, hang on a second. I am never going to repeat that and say my dad wasn't successful. Oh my goodness, he was. But I think it's just for all of us, we have this stereotype narrative of this is success. This is like what it should look like. No, we get to define. We're all living individual lives and we get to choose what we want and what success looks like in our story.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what was the turning point for you where you were like, I'm leaving and I'm going to set up my own business? Because that's a recent thing, right? For you, the
Yeah.
recent transition that you've been through.
So for me, I read a book. It's a book called Working from Home: How to Build a Career You Love When You're Not in the Office by Harriet Minter. And about halfway through, it asks you a question. I actually talk about this in my book. It asks you a question going, what is the worst case scenario for your career in 5 years' time?
Mm.
And I went, being a VP at the job company I'm working at, writing slide decks still.
Oh God.
And I was like, oh no, that's awful because that might happen in 2 years, not 5 years. I was like, I was on the track to be
Hmm.
VP. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I was like, no, okay, that's not the worst case. I said, right, the worst case is to try coaching and failing. I was like, that would be the worst case. And then I thought, no, the worst case would to have never tried coaching because I was too scared of failing.
Mm.
And then I was a bit like, do you know what? I owe it to myself to figure out what this could look like. So I messaged my coach. I was like, right, I'm doing it. And I then went on, it was a 2 year journey for me to feel confident. So at the
Hmm.
time, I'd go, I couldn't do this. How would I possibly earn enough money? I don't believe I can do it. I would say I'm not an entrepreneur. Again, it's a story. And so I then went on a bit of a journey to work on my confidence. So it meant that by the time I left, I was there going, I know I'm going to be successful. Like, I know I'm a successful entrepreneur. I know it will be amazing. And I just have that belief in myself. Um, and I believe that I've done different things because I've got that belief. Whereas if I still didn't believe in myself, no way would my business be as successful as it is and has been. And, even things like writing my book, if I didn't believe in myself, then it would still be an idea going, one day I might write a book.
Mm.
So yeah, definitely that was a turning point, realizing that I didn't want to not do it. Didn't want to not try.
Yeah, and I think that will inspire so many others because my turning point was really I was kind of forced to look at it because it was a redundancy situation. And I
Mhm.
think that's oftentimes when we do look at our options and go, what else would I do? That's kind of the conversation I had. But had I not been kind of forced to look at it, I don't know, would I still be there 6 years on? And that's scary for me to realize now that I know what I know on the other side. But for those sitting there going, well, yeah, I'd love to go and do something else, but like I couldn't because the safety net of that salary and that bonus every year and the pension pot and all the things is just too comfortable to sort of see another possibility outside. So what's some of the things that you went through in that process that got you to that point of going, of course it's going to work for me?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things that I went through. One is getting really clear on what I wanted to do, because I do work with a few people that go, I don't know what I want to do.
Mm,
So I think it's about, figuring out what you do want, whether you want help being coached to get it or however, like journaling, but figure out what you want and do that by going, what do I love doing? What am I good at? What are my strengths? What do I, time just disappears when I'm doing it. Like when I'm delivering workshops, I go, oh, we're at an hour already. Because I love doing them.
mm,
So finding what you love doing. I think that is one of the things. And then going, how can you supercharge that? So, how can you make your strengths one of your superpowers? Because
mm,
it's not just about going, oh, I'm going to do this coaching thing. Right. That's it. I quit my job and I'm just going to tell everyone I'm a coach. I'm like, no, that didn't happen. I spent hours coaching people, refining, getting better, getting qualified. And it's not about getting qualifications for validation, because that's completely different. If it's I'll feel good enough when I've got a qualification, it's like, no, 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 no. But it's going, I got qualified because I was like, yeah, I think I'd be even better with this extra qualification.
mm,
So I think it's around fine tuning and going, right, how can you get even better? I read lots of books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. It was about how do I grow and build on what I've already got as a natural skill, so that you're there building your confidence to go, yeah, I can do this. And you start that upward spiral of positivity when you know what you're good at and then do what you're good at. So I
mm,
think it starts in that, rather than going an abstract, oh, somebody told me that I should maybe start up a business doing this thing that I don't really know too much about. It's like starting from a slightly different angle, going, what do you love doing?
mm.
Um, so I think that's probably the number one thing that I would start with, going, what do you love doing? Spend as much time doing that. And then it's amazing how things kind of attract.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you seem to have done so much since then, right? You've written a book for one thing, which for me just feels like an overwhelming thing to even sit down and think about doing. So you've written a book, you work with organizations as well as individuals. Like we're going to look at your human design chart in a minute as well, which is fascinating, and there's a lot that resonates with what I'm hearing when with and what I'm seeing in your chart. But tell us about some of the things and what you've got coming up as well as the book launch.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely lots of different things. And I remember somebody said to me once, just focus on one thing and do that really well. And I'm like going, I'm not that kind of person. And quite often I hear people talk about kind of masculine energy and feminine energy. And I'd go, I've got a lot of masculine energy in the fact of the go, hey, I've got a to-do list, I will get stuff done.
Mm,
But I think I also balance it out with that bit of feminine energy going, yeah, I believe in things that will happen. And I've got a vision board, and just taking space in my own personal growth and development and being coached and being open to things. So I think I have that good balance,
mm,
rather than just being heads down, get the stuff done. Because if you just heads down, get the stuff done, you don't get to kind of think about, okay, what's possible? Am I actually doing the right things? So yeah, I think that's kind of part of how I do it. And when I kind of look at some of my highlights, I think I'm definitely getting up on stage. So I did an event a couple of months ago where I was on stage in front of 200 people, and I absolutely loved it. It's like, yes, this is what I should be doing. The
nice.
amount of people that came up to me afterwards and connected with me, and I think I've got 3 things booked off the back of that. People that were there going, I want you
Amazing.
to come do stuff at my company and things. So yeah, I do a lot of stuff with corporates. I love coaching people and helping people, and I do group programs that. So I just finished my last program a couple of weeks ago, and I get people to do a life audit before and after, and the amount that the scores went up in relationships and positive emotions and health and all parts, because actually when we focus on us, it impacts the rest of our lives. It's not just going, how can I be more successful at work? It's like, no, it's everything. So yeah, so there's some of the things that I have done that I absolutely love. So there's more of that really.
Yeah.
More group work. I'm going to be launching a mastermind at some point, which is for people that are wanting to set up their own business.
Mhm.
So I've been part of masterminds. I see the value of that. It's kind of like group coaching environment where people
Yes.
kind of join for 6 months to go, what can this look like for me? As well as carrying on the coaching for busy professionals and then working with lots of corporates. I think it's one of those things you're going, who knows? If I'd have around a year, like I wouldn't have been able to tell you exactly what would happen. And I think that's part of the fun of it. It's part of,
Mm.
as much as I go, oh, I know what I'm doing at certain times, it's actually quite fun to go, who knows? but I know it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I've got a retreat coming up in September that I'm going to be running over in Ibiza,
Oh
which
my
will be
goodness.
amazing. So yeah, just lots of things and going, does it feel good? Does it feel like the
Mm,
right time?
yeah.
And being open to opportunities.
Ah, yay. Well, it's been absolutely fabulous hearing about everything that you're up to, and I wish you all the luck with your book launch. Whose hands do you want this book to land in?
Everybody's. Well, I think it's for people that lack that slight inner confidence, that go, "Oh, I wish I felt more assertive. I wish I sounded more assertive." The book has been written for men and women. I often have women tell me that they apologize more than men, but from a confidence point of view, men absolutely do lack that inner confidence as well. So the book's written for men and women, but I do believe, or however you identify, but I do believe kind of women will probably get drawn to it a little bit just from the title perspective as well. But whether you are in corporate, thinking about leaving corporate, or on have running your own business already, it's about how do you sound more assertive? How do you stop saying sorry? How do you feel more confident?
Mm.
Um, and it's quite funny because sometimes I speak to corporations and they go, "Oh, what level do you coach? Like, is it exec coaching or is it individual contributor?" And they go, "Doesn't matter. As long as somebody is willing to grow and willing to develop, I can help them." Which doesn't necessarily land that well when you're trying to get a marketing, kind of from a perspective, and they go, "Hey, you have to niche down." I'm like, "No, I know I can help more people."
Yeah.
So my aim is to positively impact the world, and whether that's just one person reading it and going, "It's impacted me," or whether that's thousands of people, kind of doesn't matter because it creates that ripple effect. So
Mm.
yeah,
Amazing. Well, we're going to link to the direct Amazon link in the show notes below. So go grab your copy. It's out today. Wishing you all the success with this launch and with
thank
everything
you.
else that you're going to go on and do. We'll also make sure there are links to connect with you on social media and via your website. So
Perfect.
thank you, Tara, for sharing
Thank you.
your positivity and your wonderfulness. And yeah, it's been great to chat to you.
Thank you so much. And the book is called Stop Apologising. So go, yeah, I know
Fabulous.
the link's going to be in there, but you can go just search on Amazon and it'll be Waterstones online as well. But yeah, Stop
Brilliant.
Apologising.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And guys, we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.